They call it logistics. I call it babysitting 3,000 tons of steel, rubber, and humanity moving at 70 miles per hour across the North American continent. My name is Sloan Harrington. For 22 years, I've been the invisible glue holding ironclad logistics together. You don't know me, but if you bought a server rack in Texas, microchips in February, or a generator after a blizzard, I'm the reason it got there. I'm the contract renewal specialist, which is corporate speak for the woman who knows where the bodies are buried and has the shovel in her trunk. I don't have a corner office with a view of the skyline. I have a cubicle that smells like lukewarm Huckleberry Roasters drip coffee and printer toner buried deep in the operational bowels of the Denver building. And I like it that way. The quiet allows me to hear the hum of the machine. I know when a cargo handler strike at DIA is going to screw up a delivery in Salt Lake City 3 days before the union boss even decides to pick up a picket sign. I know which freight consortiums are padding their mileage and which ones will drive through a snowstorm, because they owe me a favor from 2008. But let's get one thing straight before I tell you how I burned this place to the ground. I didn't want to be a hero. I just wanted to do my damn job. Hey, real quick before I get into the blood and guts of how I took down $1 billion empire with a single email, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button and upvote this story. It helps the algorithm know you like watching train wrecks in slow motion. Thanks. Now, back to the carnage. The problem started, as it always does, with a funeral. Preston Sterling, the founder, didn't die, but he retired to a chalet in the Swiss Alps that probably cost more than the GDP of a small island nation. He was a bastard, sure, but he was a bastard who knew the price of diesel. We respected each other. We had an understanding. I kept his trucks moving, and he kept the checks clearing. Then came Bryce. Bryce Sterling, 32 years old, MBA from a school his daddy paid for a library wing to get him into. Teeth so white they looked like they were radioactive. He walked into the CEO's office wearing a suit that cost more than my car, smelling like sandalwood and unearned confidence. He didn't know a pallet jack from a potato sack, but suddenly he was the captain of the ship. His first week, he installed a kombucha tap in the break room. His second week, he fired the entire janitorial staff to outsource for efficiency, which meant the toilets backed up within 48 hours. At month 3, he was walking around the floor with a woman named Victoria Davenport, who was apparently our new director of vibes or operations liaison or whatever title you give your side piece to get her on the payroll. I kept my head down. I'm a professional. I've survived 3 recessions, a global pandemic, and a cyber attack that required me to route trucks using a paper map and a payphone. I could survive Bryce, or so I thought. The friction wasn't immediate, it was a slow grind like sand in a gearbox. Bryce didn't like me. I was legacy. I was analog. I was a middle-aged woman in a cardigan who refused to use Teams because I preferred to pick up the phone and scream at people until the job got done. To him, I was a relic. To me, he was a hood ornament on a Mack truck. Shiny, fragile, and completely useless when you hit a deer. I remember the day the dynamic shifted. It was a Tuesday. I was deep in the weeds, renegotiating a massive contract with the Rocky Mountain Teamsters. These guys are tough. They eat nails for breakfast and negotiate with baseball bats. I had been on the phone with their rep, Garrett Lawson, for 4 hours, massaging a 2% rate hike into a deal that would keep our western shipping lanes open for another 5 years. Bryce breezed by my desk, Victoria trailing behind him like a lost puppy in stilettos. "Sloan," he said, not stopping, just tossing the words over his shoulder like a gum wrapper. "We need to talk about your desk. It's cluttered, bad optics for investors." My desk was covered in bills of lading, FDA clearance forms, and legal pads covered in my chicken scratch handwriting. It was the nervous system of the company. "I'm in the middle of the regional renewal, Bryce," I said, covering the receiver. "If I clean my desk, you lose Las Vegas." He stopped. He turned around, giving me that pitying smile people give to confused elderly relatives. "We have software for that now, Sloan. Move it to the cloud and seriously lose the paper. It's 2024. He walked away. Victoria giggled. Garrett was still on the line. "Everything all right, Sloan?" "Fine. Garrett," I said, lighting a mental cigarette because I quit the real ones 10 years ago. And God, did I miss them. Just a minor glitch in the matrix. Now, about that overtime clause. I saved the deal. I saved the Western lane. The company made $40 million on that contract alone over the next quarter. Did I get a thank you? No. I got an email from HR about the clean desk policy, but the breaking point wasn't work. It never is. It's always the personal disrespect that lights the fuse. It was mid-October. Peak season was ramping up. Medical supplies, holiday inventory, commercial generators, everything was moving at once. I was working 12-hour days fueled by ibuprofen and spite. Then the email landed. Subject: mandatory attendance celebrating visionary leadership. It was an invitation to Bryce's birthday party. Join us this Saturday at the Sterling Estate in Cherry Hills for a night of innovation, celebration, and cocktails as we honor our CEO, Bryce Sterling, on his 33rd trip around the sun. Attendance is mandatory for all senior staff. Saturday, busiest Saturday of the month, the day the Asian cargo planes hit DIA. The day I had to personally oversee the FDA clearance for a massive shipment of experimental biologics that, if delayed, would spoil and cost us millions in insurance claims. I looked at the invitation. It was printed on heavy cardstock embossed with gold foil. It probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I hit reply. Bryce, happy early birthday. Unfortunately, I cannot attend. I have the biologics clearance scheduled for Saturday night. It requires live monitoring due to the temperature-sensitive nature of the cargo. Have a drink for me. Regards, Sloan. I thought that was it. Professional, polite, reasonable. I was wrong. The next morning, the office felt different. You know that feeling when the barometric pressure drops right before a tornado touches down in the plains? The air was heavy. The phones were too quiet. People were looking at me, then looking away. I sat down, booted up my ancient desktop, and took a sip of my lukewarm coffee. My login failed. Access denied. That's weird, I thought. I typed it again. Access denied. I was reaching for the phone to call IT when I heard the click-clack of heels and the squeak of expensive loafers. Sloan. Bryce's voice boomed. He wasn't smiling today. I spun my chair around. There he was, flanked by Victoria, holding a clipboard, ironically, and two security guards who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Is the server down? I asked, though deep in my gut, right where the ulcer was starting to form, I knew the answer. We're making some changes, Bryce said. He smoothed his tie. It was a silk knit, bright red, a power tie for a man with no power. We're pivoting to a more agile leadership structure. Your refusal to integrate with the team culture, he paused, referencing the party without saying it, was the final straw. You're not a team player. I stared at him. The silence stretched out rubber band tight. You're firing me, I stated flatly. Because I'm working this Saturday instead of watching you drink overpriced vodka. It's about culture fit, Victoria chimed in. Her voice was high and nasal. We need people who vibrate on our frequency. I looked at Victoria. I looked at Bryce. I looked at the security guards. Bryce, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I manage the contracts for 3,000 vendors. I am the authorized signatory for the Denver International Air Freight Hub, the Rocky Mountain Teamsters, and the Transnational Customs Alliance. If I leave, those relationships don't just transfer to the cloud. Bryce laughed. It was a dry, ugly sound. Everyone is replaceable, Sloan. That's business 101. Now, hand over your badge. Security will escort you out. I looked at my desk. Piles of paper, the sticky notes, the little framed photo of my dog, Cooper. I stood up. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't flip the table. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my plastic ID badge, and dropped it into Bryce's outstretched hand. Okay, I said. Bryce looked disappointed. He wanted a scene. He wanted me to beg. He wanted to feel like the big man crushing the rebellion. Tell your dad I said good luck, I added. My dad is in Europe. Bryce sneered. He doesn't care about the help. He will, I said. I grabbed my purse. I grabbed the picture of Cooper and I walked out. As the elevator doors closed, cutting off the sight of Bryce's smug face, I checked my watch. It was 9:14 a.m. By 9:30 a.m., the first truck would be hitting the Cheyenne Way Station, and by 9:45 a.m., the entire ironclad logistics network was going to start realizing that the heart had just been ripped out of the body. I wasn't just the help, I was the kill switch, and I had just been triggered. The air outside the office building smelled like exhaust and crisp mountain air. It was a gray morning, the kind that seeps into your bones. But for the first time in 20 years, I didn't feel the chill. I felt light. I walked across the parking lot to my 2016 Ford Explorer. It had a dent in the rear bumper from a loading dock accident I supervised 3 years ago. I tossed my purse and the picture of Cooper onto the passenger seat. I didn't start the car immediately. Instead, I sat there listening to the wind hit the roof. Most people, when they get fired after 2 decades of service, they panic. They worry about the mortgage. They worry about health insurance. They worry about their identity. And sure, a part of me was doing that math. I'm a single woman in my 40s. The job market isn't exactly begging for people who know how to manually reconcile an FDA manifest from 1998. But another part of me, the part that had dealt with angry truckers, corrupt port officials, and hysterical clients, was already moving into crisis management mode. Except this time, I wasn't managing the crisis for Ironclad. I was the crisis. I pulled out my phone. It was my personal cell. Thank God. I've always kept a firewall between my life and the company's property. I opened my email app, not the company email. My access there was cut the second Bryce smirked, but my personal Gmail. The address I had given to every major vendor, every union boss, and every logistics director over the last 2 decades. Not for official business, but for emergencies. Call me here if the building burns down, I used to tell them. Well, I struck the match. Now it was time to watch it burn. I didn't send a mass blast. That's amateur hour. That looks like sabotage. No, I needed to be compliant. Maliciously, beautifully compliant. I typed out a draft. Subject: Notice of change in authorized representation, to whom it may concern. Effective immediately, I, Sloan Harrington, am no longer employed by Ironclad Logistics. As such, I am no longer the authorized signatory or point of contact for any active service level agreements, SLAs, rate negotiations, or compliance verifications. Per Directive 4A of our Standard Master Service Agreement, Key Personnel Continuity, please be advised that my departure may trigger an automatic review or suspension of credit terms pending the appointment of a qualified successor. Please direct all future urgent matters to Bryce Sterling, CEO. Best regards, Sloan. I read it over. It was dry. It was factual. It was legally bulletproof. Directive 4A. That was the magic bullet. See, years ago, when Ironclad was expanding aggressively, our credit rating was shaky. Vendors were nervous about getting paid. To soothe them, Preston Sterling had me insert a clause into our major contracts. Basically said that if the key personnel, me, who held the relationship, left the company, the vendor had the right to immediately pause services or demand cash up front until they vetted the new management. It was a trust clause. They trusted me, not the company. Bryce didn't know about Directive 4A. Bryce probably thought a master service agreement was a bondage term. I hit send on the first email, then the second, then the third. I went down the list alphabetically. Allied Freight Consortium sent. Denver International Port Authority sent. North American Border Brokerage sent. I sat there for 20 minutes just hitting send. It was rhythmic, therapeutic, like popping bubble wrap, but every pop cost Ironclad $100,000. My phone buzzed. It was Garrett from the Rocky Mountain Teamsters. Sloan, what the hell is this email? His voice rumbled, sounding like gravel in a blender. I just got a bounce back from your work address saying user unknown. I'm out, Garrett, I said, leaning back in my seat. Bryce let me go this morning. Culture fit. Culture fit? Garrett laughed, a barking sound. Does he know the ink isn't even dry on the renewal we talked about Tuesday? He doesn't seem to think it matters, Garrett. He thinks the software handles it. Software don't buy me a beer when my guys are working Christmas, Garrett grumbled. So who's handling the dispatch for the biohazard chemical shipment tonight? That stuff is volatile. If my guys don't have the FDA clearance code signed by a certified officer. That would be Bryce, I said. Or maybe Victoria. She vibrates on a high frequency, Garrett. I'm sure she can vibrate the hazmat paperwork through. Yeah, I know, he said. I ain't risking my guys. If you ain't signing off, the trucks don't roll. Directive 4A, right? Directive 4A, I confirmed. Strict adherence to safety protocols. You got it, Sloan. Trucks are parking. Enjoy your day off. The line went dead. I smiled, one domino down. I started the car and drove out of the lot. As I turned onto the main road, I passed a line of ironclad trucks heading inbound. They looked so impressive, those big matte black cabs with the silver logo. The drivers had no idea that in about an hour their fuel cards were going to get declined because the fleet management vendor, Mitchell from Apex Fleet, whom I sent a Christmas card to every year, was about to read my email. I didn't go home. I couldn't sit in my apartment and stare at the walls. I needed a command post. I drove to Sam's number 3 downtown. It was a local institution. Vinyl booths patched with duct tape, coffee that tasted like battery acid, and eggs that were cooked in grease older than Bryce. It was perfect. I walked in. The waitress, Roxy, nodded at me. She knew me. I'd spent many late nights here waiting for drivers to show up. Coffee, hun? Roxy asked. Keep the pot, Roxy, and give me the Wi-Fi password again. I set up my laptop on the sticky table. My phone started buzzing again and again and again. Incoming call, Apex Logistics Dispatch. Incoming call, Dallas Customs Broker. Incoming call, Bryce Sterling Work. I stared at Bryce's name dancing on the screen. I let it ring. He called again immediately. I let it ring again. I took a sip of the battery acid coffee. It tasted like freedom. I opened a new tab on my browser. I wasn't done yet. I had notified the vendors. Now I needed to notify the competitors, but not yet. That was too aggressive. First, I needed to let Bryce sweat. I needed him to feel the silence of the phones not ringing in his office and the chaos of the phones ringing in everyone else's. I looked at the clock. 10:45 a.m. At 11 a.m., the daily cross-dock status meeting was scheduled to happen. Usually, I ran it. I would tell the warehouse managers which trucks were late, which bays were open, and which orders were priority. Today, Victoria would be running it. I imagined Victoria standing in front of a room full of grizzled warehouse foremen holding her clipboard, trying to explain why half the inbound fleet was parked on the side of the highway, and why the customs brokers were demanding to speak to a Sloan. Sorry, guys, I whispered to the empty diner booth. The frequency is about to get real low. Then a text message popped up, not from a vendor, from Claudia, the payroll manager. She was a good egg, quiet, religious, baked excellent brownies. Claudia: Sloan, OMG, are you gone? Bryce is screaming in the hallway. He says you sabotaged the server. He can't access the vendor portal. I chuckled. I didn't sabotage anything. I just had the RSA token encryption keys sent to my personal cell phone because IT, which was outsourced to a cheap firm in a generic overseas location, had set it up that way 5 years ago and never changed it. I texted back, I didn't touch the server, Claudia, but tell him the RSA token expires in 60 seconds. He might want to hurry. I didn't send him the code. I just took a bite of my toast. The war had begun and I had the high ground. The diner was filling up with the lunch rush. Drivers, construction workers, guys with names like Mac and Bud wearing neon vests. It was a symphony of clattering plates and blue-collar gossip. In the middle of it, I was the conductor of a silent orchestra of disaster. My laptop screen was a dashboard of my own making. I had a tracking site open, publicly available by the way, monitoring the movements of Ironclad's fleet. Red dots were appearing on the map. A red dot meant a truck was stationary for more than 30 minutes. There was a cluster of red dots forming outside of Aurora. That would be the regional fulfillment center. The gate codes for the secure yard were changed weekly. I used to text the new codes to the drivers every Monday morning. Today was Tuesday. We had a security protocol update that required a manual reset. I hadn't done the reset before I left. Bryce, in his infinite wisdom, probably didn't even know the gate had a code. He probably thought it opened by magic or the sheer force of his charisma. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was 214, Dallas. Text: Ms. Harrington, this is Sullivan, legal counsel for Pacific Heavy Haul. Our trucks are locked out of the Ironclad yard in Dallas. Your office is unresponsive. Are we in breach or are you? I typed back. Mr. Sullivan, I am no longer with Ironclad. Please refer to Directive 4A. I cannot authorize entry. Good luck. 3 minutes later, another red dot appeared on the map in Texas. It was working. The system wasn't breaking. It was freezing. It was a safety mechanism, like when the human body goes into shock to preserve the vital organs. The vendors were protecting themselves because the guarantor of their safety, me, was gone. I ordered a refill on the coffee. Roxy poured it with a heavy hand. You look like you're planning a bank heist, sugar, she said, eyeing my laptop. Better, Roxy, I said. I'm auditing one. At 12:30 p.m., my phone rang. It wasn't Bryce this time. It was the frantic, breathless voice of Victoria. I debated not answering. But curiosity is a vice, and I'm a sinner. This is Sloan, I answered, my voice professional, calm, the voice of a woman who isn't currently watching a company implode. Sloan, Victoria shrieked. She sounded like she was crying or hyperventilating. You have to give us the passwords. The drivers are calling the police. They're stuck at the gates. Victoria, I said gently, I don't have the passwords. They're on the server. We can't get into the server. Keeps asking for codes sent to your phone. Ah, I said, that's the RSA token security protocol. Very important for data integrity. Well, give me the code, she screamed. I can't, Victoria. I'm a civilian now. Sharing security credentials with unauthorized personnel is a violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. I could go to jail. You wouldn't want that, would you? There was a silence on the other end. A stunned, baffled silence. But Bryce says you're holding the company hostage. Bryce fired me, Victoria, effective immediately. That means my clearance is revoked. If I give you that code, I'm hacking. I won't break the law for a company I don't work for. I'm putting you on speaker, she hissed. Sloan, it was Bryce. His voice was tight, strained. The arrogance was cracked, leaking panic. Stop playing games. Give us the code or I'm suing you for corporate sabotage. Bryce, I said, leaning into the booth. You fired me for culture fit. You said I was replaceable. Surely your agile leadership team can figure out how to reset a password with the IT provider. We called IT. They said the account admin has to authorize the reset. That's you. Sounds like a flaw in your org chart, I said. I'd suggest you call the IT provider's emergency line. It costs $5,000 a minute, but they can override it in, maybe 24 hours. 24 hours? Bryce exploded. We have 400 tons of temperature-sensitive biologics sitting in Phoenix. They'll spoil. Biologics, I mused. That's tricky. You need the reefer units running. Did you renew the fuel cards for the refrigeration trucks? Those expire on the 15th of the month. Today is the 16th. I usually handle that manually because the automated system glitches with the Arizona vendors. I heard a thud. It sounded like someone punching a desk. Fix it, Sloan. Come back in, fix it, and maybe we won't sue you. Are you offering me my job back? I asked. I'm offering you a chance to not be destroyed, he yelled. No thanks, I said. I'm busy. I'm cleaning my apartment. Feng shui, very important for the vibes. I hung up. I stared at the phone. My hand was shaking slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I had just hung up on the CEO of a billion-dollar company. I looked at the map. More red dots. A cluster in Phoenix now. The biologics. I felt a twinge of guilt, not for Bryce, but for the cargo and the drivers. The drivers were the innocent pawns here. I opened my contact list. I found the number for Phoenix Pete, the foreman at the cold storage facility where our trucks were likely idling. I texted him. Pete, it's Sloan. I'm out. The kid is driving the bus off a cliff. The fuel cards are going to bounce. Don't let the driver sit there. Tell them to decouple and hook up to the shore power at your yard. Charge it to the emergency contingency account. I set it up 3 years ago. It's pre-funded. Pete texted back instantly. Roger that, boss lady. I heard the news. We got you. Screw the kid. We'll save the meds, but we ain't releasing the trucks until you say so. I smiled. The cargo was safe. The drivers were safe. Bryce was screwed. I realized then that I wasn't just unemployed. I was a freelancer, and my currency was influence. I closed the laptop. The diner rush was dying down. I needed to make a move. Sitting here was reactive. I needed to be proactive. I thought about who stood to gain the most from Ironclad's collapse. Global Supply Solutions, GSS, our biggest rival. Their regional VP, a shark named Vance Caldwell, had been trying to poach me for a decade. I always said no out of loyalty to Preston Sterling. Loyalty is a two-way street, and Bryce had just paved over it. I picked up my phone. I dialed Vance's number. He answered on the second ring. Sloan Harrington, his smooth baritone voice purred. What do I owe the pleasure? Did you finally get tired of saving the world for peanuts? I'm free, Vance, I said. Free? Fired this morning. There was a pause, a thoughtful, expensive pause. Where are you? He asked. At Sam's number 3 downtown. Stay there, Vance said. I'm sending a car. We have lunch and we talk about the future. Vance, I said. One thing. Yes? I'm not coming alone. Oh? I'm bringing the Denver International Air Freight Hub, the Rocky Mountain Teamsters, and the North American Border Brokerage with me. I could practically hear him smiling through the phone. I'll send the limo, he said. A black Mercedes S-Class pulls up to a diner. It sticks out like a diamond in a pile of coal. The driver, a guy who looks like he doubles as a bouncer for a high-end club, opens the door for me. I grab my beat-up tote bag and my laptop. Roxy behind the counter whistles. Moving up in the world, Sloan. Just a different kind of ride, Roxy, I say. I slide into the back seat. It smells like new leather and money. As we glide onto I-25, heading toward the business district, I check the news on my phone. Nothing on the major networks yet. Logistics is boring until it breaks, but the industry trade blogs are lighting up. Freight waves, headline, Ironclad Logistics reporting major IT outage, hubs gridlocked. The Lodestar, Who is Sloan Harrington and why are truckers refusing to move for Ironclad? I almost laugh. I'm trending in the weirdest, nerdiest corner of the internet. I am a celebrity. My phone vibrates. A voicemail. It's from my mother. Claudia, the payroll manager, must have called the prayer circle. Sloan, my mom's voice quavers. Pastor Dave heard you were fired. We're praying for you. Also, Aunt Barb wants to know if you can still get her that discount on shipping a crate of ceramic frogs from Mexico. Call me. I rub my temples. Even in the apocalypse, Aunt Barb needs her frogs. We arrive at Garden Grace, a steakhouse downtown where the waiters wear tuxedos and the water costs $9. Vance Caldwell is waiting at a corner table. He looks like a Bond villain who decided to go into supply chain management instead of world domination. Perfectly tailored suit, gray temples, eyes that calculate profit margins in real time. Sloan, he stands, offering a hand. You look energized. I look like I've been fired, Vance, I say, sitting down. Let's cut the crap. You know what's happening. I do, he nods, signaling the waiter. Our dispatchers are reporting a massive uptick in spot market requests. Ironclad loads are being dumped on the open board. Rates are skyrocketing. It's a feeding frenzy. Bryce is panicking, I say, unfolding the napkin. He's trying to cover the loads. He can't move, but he doesn't have the drivers. And why is that, Sloan? Vance leans in. Why are the drivers parking? Unions don't strike over a mid-level manager getting canned. I'm not mid-level, Vance. I'm the insurance policy. They know that without me, the checks might bounce. The way station tickets won't get paid, and the customs brokers won't clear the papers. I didn't tell them to stop. I just told them I wasn't there to protect them anymore. Self-preservation did the rest. The waiter arrives. I order a whiskey. Neat. Vance orders a sparkling water. So, Vance says, what do you want? A VP title? Corner office. We can match your salary at 20%. I don't want a job, Vance, I say, staring at him. I want autonomy. Explain. I want to build a division within global strategic accounts. I bring my book of business, my vendors, my contacts, my trust. I run it my way. No interference from your director of vibes or whatever corporate fluff you have. I report to you and only you. And if I say a truck moves, it moves. If I say we pay a premium to get a driver home for Christmas, we pay it. Vance taps his finger on the table. You're asking for a fiefdom. I'm offering you an empire. I correct him. Ironclad is bleeding out. By tomorrow morning, their major clients, Amazon, Walmart, Target, will be looking for a lifeboat. I can be that lifeboat, but I steer the ship. Vance smiles. It's a predatory smile, but I like it. It's honest. Deal, he says. But you have to bring the Denver hub with you immediately. We have a backlog. Done, I say. Give me a contract. While we're waiting for the steaks, my phone buzzes again. It's a text from an unknown number. Text. You leaked the clearance codes. It's Bryce. He's moved from professional threats to personal insults. I text back. I didn't leak anything. I just didn't renew the encryption license. It expired at noon. Should have checked the autopay. I take a sip of whiskey. It burns, but it's a good burn. Then a notification pops up that makes my blood run cold. Alert. Department of Transportation. Incident report. Ironclad Freight Vehicle 4004 involved in multi-car pileup on I-25. Hazmat spill. My stomach drops. Hazmat. That's the chemical load Garrett was worried about. I call Garrett immediately. He answers on the first ring. Sloan, tell me you saw it. Garrett sounds shaken. I saw the alert. Was it one of ours? Yeah, but listen. It wasn't one of my guys. It was a scab. Non-union driver Bryce hired off a digital freight board an hour ago to move the load because we refused. Oh my God, I whisper. The kid didn't have the hazmat endorsement. Sloan, he took a corner too fast, jackknifed, leaked volatile biosolvent all over the interstate. EPA is en route. This isn't just a delay anymore. This is a federal investigation. I close my eyes. This is what happens. This is the cost of arrogance. It's not just money, it's safety, it's lives. Is the driver okay? I ask. He's in the hospital. He'll live. But Ironclad, they're done, Sloan. The DOT is going to ground the entire fleet for a safety audit, mandatory immediate suspension of operations. I look at Vance across the table. He sees the look on my face. What happened? He asks. Ironclad just killed itself, I say. Hazmat spill. Scab driver. DOT is shutting them down. Vance whistles low. The stock is going to zero. Bryce doesn't just need a lawyer, I say, standing up. He needs a priest. I grab my bag. Where are you going? Vance asks. We haven't signed the papers. Draw them up, I say. I have to go make sure none of my people get dragged down with the ship. And then I have to have a conversation with a very angry father. Preston Sterling. He lands in 2 hours, I say, checking the flight tracker I still have active for his private jet, and I'm going to meet him on the tarmac. This wasn't just business anymore, it was a rescue mission. I didn't go to the airport immediately. I went to the one place I knew Bryce wouldn't look, but the people who actually mattered would find me, the archives. It wasn't a library, it was a storage facility in an industrial park where Ironclad kept physical copies of records dating back to the 80s. I had a key. I always had a key. I needed the original indemnity clauses signed by Preston Sterling, ones that explicitly stated that safety compliance was the sole responsibility of the active CEO. I needed to prove that when I walked out, the chain of custody broke and the negligence was 100% on Bryce. I was digging through a box marked 2015 Hazardous Materials Protocols when the metal roll-up door rattled. I didn't flinch. I knew who it was. You're trespassing, Sloan. I turned around. It was Saul Goodman. No, that's not his name, but it might as well be. Harrison Wells, Ironclad's general counsel. 60 years old, suit that cost more than my car, eyes that had seen everything and felt nothing. It's not trespassing if I still have the key, Harrison, I said, holding up a file. And technically, I'm doing discovery for my own defense. Harrison sighed and walked in. He didn't look angry. He looked exhausted. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped a spot on a dusty filing cabinet before leaning against it. The DOT is swarming the HQ, Harrison said. They seized the servers. Bryce is locked in his office crying, literally crying. Sloan, Victoria is live streaming an apology on TikTok. It's grotesque. He hired a scab for a hazmat load, Harrison. What did he expect? He expected you to fix it, Harrison said quietly. He thought you were bluffing. He didn't realize that you were the system. I didn't break it, Harrison, I said, my voice hard. I just stopped holding it together. I know, he said. That's why I'm here. The board is holding an emergency meeting tonight. They want to offer you a settlement, a big one, to come back, to talk to the DOT, to say this was a miscommunication during a transition. I laughed. It echoed in the cold storage unit. A miscommunication? A guy is in the hospital. EPA is scrubbing biosolvent off I-25. You want me to go under oath and say that's a whoopsie? We want you to save the company, Harrison said. For the employees, for Claudia in payroll, for the drivers. I am saving them, I said. I'm moving them. I'm taking a job with Global Harrison, and I'm taking the good people with me. Harrison's face fell. He knew what that meant. It was the death knell. And Sterling? Harrison asked. Does he know? He knows the stock is tanking. He doesn't know why, but he lands in 40 minutes. He's going to blame you, Harrison warned. He's a father first, a businessman second. He'll see this as betrayal. He can see it however he wants, I said, tucking the file into my bag, but he's going to listen to me. I walked past Harrison. He didn't try to stop me. Sloan, he called out as I reached the door. I paused. That email regarding Directive 4A, he said. Brilliant. Evil, but brilliant. It tied my hands completely. I couldn't even threaten the vendors legally because they were contractually obligated to pause. Read the fine print, Harrison, I said. I wrote it. I drove to Centennial Airport on the outskirts of the city. The rain had stopped, leaving the sky a bruised purple. I parked near the fence, watching the runway lights flicker on. A Gulfstream G650 descended from the clouds, sleek and white. It touched down with a screech of tires that sounded like a scream. The founder was home. I didn't go to the plane. I wasn't allowed on the tarmac. I waited by the gate where his driver usually picked him up, but the driver wasn't there. The driver was probably stuck in the chaos at HQ, or maybe he'd quit too. The plane taxied to the hangar. The stairs lowered. Preston Sterling descended. He was 72, but he moved like a linebacker. He was on his phone, shouting. Even from 50 yards away, I could see the rage radiating off him. He looked around for his car. He saw nothing. Then he saw my Ford Explorer. I rolled down the window. He stormed over, his coat flapping in the wind. He looked like Lear on the heath. You, he roared, pointing a finger at me. You ungrateful, treacherous. Get in, Preston, I said, using his first name. I never used his first name. He stopped. The shock of it silenced him for a second. "Get in," I repeated. "Your driver isn't coming." Bryce fired the dispatch team, so nobody told the limo service your flight was early. I'm the only ride you have. He stared at me, his face red. He looked at the empty parking lot. He looked at his phone, which was likely blowing up with bad news. He yanked the door open and climbed into the passenger seat. "Drive," he growled, "and start explaining why my company is worth half of what it was this morning." "Put your seatbelt on, Preston," I said, shifting into gear. "It's a long story, and it starts with a pair of Gucci loafers and your son's ego." We peeled out of the airfield. The king in exile riding in a 2016 Ford Explorer. "You destroyed my legacy," he spat, staring out the window. "No, Preston," I said, merging onto the highway. "I just turned the lights on. You're the one who left the kids alone with matches. Bryce said you hacked the system, locked him out. Bryce doesn't know the difference between a hack and an expired password." I left. The system followed me. "That's not sabotage, Preston. That's gravity." He stayed silent for a mile. "The accident," he said, his voice softer, older, "is the driver. He's alive. But the EPA fines will bankrupt the liquidity you have on hand. I have reserves. Not enough to cover a gross negligence suit when the DOT finds out your CEO hired a non-certified driver via an app because he fired the compliance officer." He turned to look at me. His eyes were cold blue steel. "So you want your job back? Is that it? You want a raise? You want me to fire Bryce? I don't want my job back," I said. "I'm done, Preston. I'm just doing this courtesy ride so you don't hear it from the news." "Hear what?" "That I'm taking the supply chain with me to global." The silence in the car was deafening. It was the sound of an era ending. "You wouldn't," he whispered. "I already did. The Denver Port Authority signed the transfer request 10 minutes ago." He looked like he might have a stroke. But then a strange thing happened. He slumped back in the seat and he started to laugh, a dry, wheezing chuckle. "Directive 4A, he muttered. "I remember when you wrote that. I told you it was overkill." "It was insurance," I said, "and you cashed it in." "I had to." We were approaching the HQ. Police lights were flashing in the parking lot. News vans were set up on the lawn. It looked like a crime scene. "Drop me at the back," he said. I drove around to the loading docks, the place where I started 20 years ago. He opened the door. He paused, one foot on the pavement. "Sloan," he said. "Yeah, Preston? If I fire Bryce, will you stay?" I looked at the loading dock. I looked at the crumbling concrete. I looked at the empire I had built with my own blood and stress. "No," I said. He nodded. He understood. He slammed the door and walked toward the chaos. A king returning to a burning castle. I put the car in reverse. I didn't watch him go. I had a contract to sign with Vance. The contract with Global Supply Solutions was thick. 50 pages of legalese on bonded paper. Vance Caldwell sat across from me in his office, which, unlike my old cubicle, had a view of the entire city, including the smoke rising metaphorically mostly from Ironclad's headquarters 3 miles east. "Standard non-compete is waived," Vance said, tapping a section with a Montblanc pen. "We've also added the autonomy clause you requested. You answer to me and the board. No middle management." I read the text. It was everything I had ever wanted. Respect, authority, pay that actually reflected the fact that I never slept. But as I held the pen, I felt a strange heaviness. I wasn't just signing a job offer. I was signing a death warrant for the place I had spent half my life. "Cold feet?" Vance asked, watching me closely. "Phantom limb pain," I replied. "I spent 20 years building that network, Vance. It feels weird to sell it." "You're not selling it, Sloan. You're rescuing it. Ironclad is radioactive. If those vendors don't move to us, they go under. The small trucking companies, the mom-and-pop warehouses, they need a host. You're the host." He was right. That was the brutal logic of the supply chain. Move or die. I signed. Sloan Harrington, Senior Vice President of Strategic Operations. "Welcome to the dark side," Vance smiled, sliding a glass of champagne toward me. "I prefer to think of it as the winning side," I said, ignoring the drink. "Now, can I get a phone? I have work to do." For the next 6 hours, I sat in a leather chair that cost more than my first car and dismantled my old life. I called the Denver International Air Freight Hub. "Sloan, thank God. We have cargo stacked to the ceiling. Ironclad isn't answering. What do we do?" "Route to Global, code 884, I said. "I'm authorizing the transfer." "You're at Global?" "Okay, switching the manifest now." I called the consortium of Western truckers. Hey boys, it's Sloan. I heard about the crash. Listen, if you want your invoices paid this week, you need to bill global. I'm fast tracking the vendor setup. We're with you, Sloan. Just tell us where to drive. It was a landslide, a mass migration. By 8 p.m., I had moved 60% of Ironclad's active volume to global. My phone buzzed. A text from Claudia at Ironclad. Claudia, Sloan, it's a bloodbath here. Preston fired Bryce. Security escorted him out. He was crying. Sloan, actually crying. Preston is in the conference room. He looks old. He's asking for you. I stared at the screen. Bryce was gone. The witch was dead, but the house had already fallen. Vance, I said, I need to step out. You just started, he frowned. I need to close the loop, I said. I drove back to Ironclad. The news vans were gone, but the police tape was still up around the Hazmat area. The building looked dark except for the lights on the top floor. The executive suite. My badge didn't work, obviously. I buzzed the intercom. Security, a tired voice answered. It's Sloan, I said. There was a pause. Then the buzzer buzzed. I walked through the lobby. It was empty. A ghost town. The Employee of the Month plaque still had a picture of Victoria on it. I resisted the urge to rip it down. I took the elevator up. The executive floor was silent. I walked past Bryce's office. The door was open. It was trashed. Papers everywhere, broken vase, a spilled kombucha on the rug, the smell of failure. I walked to the boardroom. Bryce Sterling was sitting at the head of the long mahogany table. He was alone. A bottle of scotch was open in front of him. He looked up when I entered. He looked shrunken, defeated. You took them all, he said. It wasn't a question. I took the ones who wanted to survive, I said, remaining standing. Global stock is up 8% in after-hours trading, he muttered. Ironclad is halted. He poured 2 glasses of scotch. He slid one down the table. It stopped right at the edge near me. I fired him, Preston said. Bryce. I cut him off, disinherited him. He's gone. That's good, Preston, but it's a day late. I know. He slammed his hand on the table. I know. I trusted him. He's my son. He's an idiot, Preston, and you knew it. But you let him play CEO because you wanted a legacy. And what is this? He gestured around the empty room. Is this my legacy? No, I said, picking up the glass. I am. He stared at me. I trained the people who actually run this place. I wrote the contracts. I built the relationships. You provided the capital, Preston, but I provided the competence. And when you let that competence walk out the door, you lost the right to the legacy. I downed the scotch. It was expensive. Smooth. I offered you the COO job, he said quietly in the dark. You said no because I don't want to fix your mistakes anymore, I said. I want to build something new with Vance Caldwell. He sneered. He's a shark. He's a shark who knows not to bite the hand that feeds the logistics network, I said. I put the glass down. I came here to tell you one thing, Preston. Claudia in payroll and the warehouse team and the dispatchers. Don't screw them. Give them their severance. If I hear that one paycheck bounces, I will poach every single remaining employee you have and leave you with nothing but the copper wire in the walls. Preston looked at me for a moment. I saw the old fire in his eyes. They'll be paid, he said. Good. I turned to leave. Sloan, he said. I stopped. You were the best I ever had, he said. I know, I said. That's why it cost you so much to lose me. I walked out. I took the elevator down. I walked to my car. I deleted the emergency contact list from my personal phone. They were all in the global database now. I was done. You'd think that after destroying a billion-dollar company, I'd go home and sleep for a week. But adrenaline is a hell of a drug, and I was wired. I needed one more thing, a cherry on top of the sundae of destruction. I knew where Bryce would go. Not to his dad's house he'd been kicked out of, not to a hotel. His credit cards were likely frozen by the company lawyers. He'd go to Avanti F&B, a trendy rooftop lounge where the local influencers hung out. He needed validation. He needed an audience. I drove by. Sure enough, his Tesla, the one with the custom CEO 1 plate, was parked illegally in a loading zone. I parked across the street and watched through the window. I could see him. He was at the bar waving his arms, talking to a group of bored-looking women. Victoria was there too, but she wasn't standing next to him. She was on her phone, thumbing furiously. I pulled out my phone. I still had Victoria's Instagram notifications on. New post from @VictoriaVibes. Image, a selfie of her looking sad with a filter. Caption, sometimes you have to cut toxic people out of your life to protect your peace. New chapter starting. Single life. Boss babe. Not my fault. I laughed out loud in the dark car. She had dumped him. Ship hadn't even fully sunk, and the rats were already posting about it. Bryce looked erratic inside. He grabbed a woman's arm. She pulled away. The bouncer stepped in. It was pathetic. He wasn't a titan of industry, he was just a drunk kid with a canceled credit card. I decided not to go in. I didn't need to rub it in. Watching him get bounced from a bar was satisfying enough. But then my phone rang. It was Claudia again. "Sloan," she whispered. "You need to see the company email, the one Bryce just sent. He must have bypassed the server lock before he left." "I don't have access, Claudia. I'll forward it to your Gmail. Read it." I opened the email. From Bryce Sterling, CEO, to all staff. Subject, the truth. You all think Sloan is a hero. She's a traitor. She stole our clients. She sabotaged the servers. She's a bitter old cat lady who couldn't handle the new vision. I am the victim here. My father is senile. I am the future. It was a manifesto of madness, rambling, misspelled, full of caps lock rage, and then at the bottom, an attachment. Project Vibes budget XLSX. He had accidentally attached Victoria's department budget instead of whatever evidence he thought he had against me. I opened the spreadsheet. It wasn't a budget. It was a list of consulting fees paid to various shell companies for personal wellness retreats and aesthetic enhancements. He had been embezzling, using company funds to pay for Victoria's lifestyle. This wasn't just incompetence anymore. This was a felony. I forwarded the email to Harrison Wells, the lawyer. Subject, FYI. Body, you might want to call the FBI before they call you. 10 minutes later, I saw blue lights flashing in the rearview mirror, but they weren't for me. 2 police cruisers pulled up to the lounge. Officers went inside. Moments later, they came out escorting Bryce. He was in cuffs. He was screaming. "Do you know who I am? I'm the CEO." I watched them shove him into the back of the cruiser. "No, Bryce," I whispered. "You're a liability." I put the car in drive. Now it was truly over. I drove home. My apartment was quiet. Cooper, my golden retriever, greeted me with a wagging tail, oblivious to the fact that his owner had just decapitated a corporate dynasty. I sat on my couch. The TV was off. I poured a glass of cheap wine, not the good stuff Vance had offered. My phone rang. It was Preston Sterling. "He's in jail," Preston said. His voice sounded like broken glass. I saw," I said. "Embezzlement. Harrison says it's millions. He stole from the pension fund, Sloan." That hit me. The pension fund. The money for the drivers, for Roxy's husband who drove for us for 30 years. "Fix it, Preston," I said. "I can't. The accounts are frozen. The fines, Sloan. If the pension is gone, these people have nothing." I closed my eyes. I wanted to destroy Bryce. I didn't want to destroy the drivers. "Sloan," Preston pleaded, "you have the contracts, you have the leverage, you're with Global now. Can you structure the deal so Global absorbs the pension liability?" It was a massive ask. It would cost Global millions. Vance would hate it. It made no business sense. But then I thought about Garrett. I thought about the guys who drove through blizzards. "I can try," I said, "but it will cost you anything. You sell the Ironclad brand to Global for $1. We take the assets, we take the liabilities, we take the pension, you walk away, you retire to Europe, and you never, ever come back. You want me to sell my life's work for $1. It's worth less than that right now, Preston. It's negative equity. I'm offering you a clean exit." There was a long silence. "Do it," he said. I hung up. I called Vance. It was 11 p.m. Sloan, change of plans, Vance. We're not just taking the clients, we're buying the whole damn company. For how much? $1? And the catch? We assume the pension fund liability. Sloan, that's sentimental. That's not good business. It's great business, Vance. We get the fleet, we get the warehouses, we get the drivers, loyal drivers who will know that we saved their retirement. You want loyalty? You buy it. Vance was silent. He was calculating. You're a shark, Sloan, he said finally. A sentimental shark, but fine. Draft it. I leaned back on the couch. I had done it. I had destroyed the king, jailed the prince, and usurped the kingdom, and I saved the peasants. I took a sip of wine. It didn't taste like victory. It tasted like exhaustion, but it was the best wine I'd ever had. 3 weeks later, my new office at Global has a glass wall. I can see the mountains from here. I can see the cargo planes touching down at DIA. Some of those freighters are painted ironclad matte black, but they have a Global Supply Solution sticker slapped over the logo. We're calling it the acquisition of the decade. Forbes wrote an article about it. They called me the Iron Lady of Logistics. I hate it, but I framed it for my mom. Bryce is out on bail, awaiting trial. Rumors say Victoria is testifying against him in exchange for immunity. She's launching a podcast about surviving toxic workplaces. I subscribed. It's hilarious. Preston is in the Swiss Alps. He sent me a case of wine. I haven't opened it. The drivers kept their pensions. Garrett sent me a bouquet of flowers that was so big it required a forklift to get it to my desk. The card read to the boss lady, "We roll when you say roll." I sat at my desk looking at the clean digital dashboard on my 3 monitors. No paper, no clutter, just efficiency. My assistant, a sharp kid named Julian who actually knows how to use Excel, walked in. Mail call, Sloan. He dropped a stack of letters on my desk. I flipped through them. Vendor contracts. Thank you notes. And then a small pink envelope. It was from the Department of Corrections. I opened it. A letter from Bryce. Handwritten. Sloan. You think you won. You're just a cog. You'll always be a cog. I hope you enjoy your cubicle. I looked at my sprawling corner office. I looked at the view of the empire I now commanded. I didn't feel anger. I felt nothing. He was a ghost. A glitch I had patched. I picked up the letter. I walked over to the shredder where the pink paper turned into confetti. I walked back to my desk. My phone rang. It was Vance. "Sloan, we have a situation in the Panama Canal. A ship is stuck. We need a route plan." I smiled. "I'm on it," I said. I put on my headset. I pulled up the map. The machine was humming, and I was the one holding the wrench. "Let's move some freight," I said to the empty room. And for the first time in 20 years, I didn't need a cigarette. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes.